Today we're diving into the story of one of the 20th century's most disturbing figures, a man who truly lived a shocking double life. We're pulling from the incredible book Poisoner in Chief by Stephen Kinzer. And this isn't just any author. Kinzer is a veteran foreign correspondent, a former New York Times bureau chief, who really dug deep to uncover the truth about the CIA's master chemist, Sidney Gottlieb. So, let's get into it. Okay, picture this. It's 1973. A man retires from his government job. He sells all his stuff and moves to this rustic eco-lodge in the woods. He spends his days meditating, writing poetry, raising goats. He even starts dedicating his life to helping people in need, volunteering in a hospice. This was the life Sidney Gottlieb chose for himself. But then there's this. That same man, the goat-raising poet, was also, according to Kinzer's deep research, his generation's chief torturer. This was a man who ran horrific experiments on people, who had no idea what was happening to them, and oversaw secret prisons all over the world. So, how? How can one person be both of those things? That's really the question at the very heart of this whole story. So let's go back to the beginning. Who exactly was Sidney Gottlieb before he became the CIA's, its dark magician?
Gottlieb was, a really complicated guy. On one hand, he was absolutely brilliant, a biochemist with a PhD from Caltech, but he was also kind of an outsider. He had a stutter and a clubfoot his whole life, and he was just desperate to serve in World War II, but the army rejected him because of his limp. That rejection, it really lit a fire in him. He became determined to serve America no matter what it took. And in a really weird twist of fate, that same handicap was something he shared with the man who would become his boss and his biggest protector, the director of the CIA, Allen Dulles.
So how in the world does a brilliant, patriotic biochemist end up in charge of a secret mind control program? Well, the answer really lies in the absolute paranoia of the Cold War. You have to remember, the years right after World War II were just dripping with fear. The CIA gets created in 1947 to fight this new, shadowy war against the Soviets. Then, in 1950, a journalist with ties to the CIA, a guy named Edward Hunter, comes up with this terrifying new phrase, brainwashing. And that idea, that the communists could literally control people's minds, it spread like wildfire. When American POWs started coming home from the Korean War praising communism, that fear turned into a full-blown panic inside Washington. And this fear, it went all the way to the top. Just listen to this quote from the head of the CIA himself, Allen Dulles. He called it brain warfare. He was totally convinced the Soviets were turning the human mind into a weapon. And he believed America had no choice but to fight fire with fire by any means necessary. And to do that, he needed a very, very specific kind of person, someone willing to go to the darkest places. He needed Sidney Gottlieb. And that is how it began, the CIA's most infamous program, a project that would define Gottlieb's entire life and, frankly, haunt America's conscience for decades to come. Project MK Ultra. MK Ultra was basically Gottlieb's answer to all that paranoia. It was this huge, sprawling, top-secret program with one single, terrifying goal: to figure out how to get total control over a person's mind. They were literally looking for a way to make anyone do or say anything, to basically turn human beings into puppets. I mean, the sheer scope of what they were trying to do was just horrifying. Under Gottlieb's watch, MK Ultra went down every dark alley you could imagine. We're talking sensory deprivation, electroshocks, hypnosis, poisons, bacteria. They even looked into whether just changing what someone eats could make them crack under interrogation. Literally nothing was off the table. And get this, these were not just experiments happening in some sterile lab. Oh no, Gottlieb took this research right out into the real world. He set up these CIA safe houses in places like Greenwich Village in New York and in San Francisco. And there, operatives hired by the CIA would lure unsuspecting people back to these apartments, secretly drug them with LSD, and then just watch them through a two-way mirror to see what happened. They called it Operation Midnight Climax. As you can imagine, these monstrous experiments weren't just theories on a page. They had a very real and often absolutely tragic human cost. Probably the most infamous victim of MK Ultra was actually one of the CIA's own guys, a brilliant army biochemist named Frank Olson, who worked right alongside Gottlieb. In November of 1953,
9 days after Gottlieb secretly slipped LSD into his drink at a work retreat, Frank Olson fell to his death from the 13th floor window of his hotel in New York City.
The official story was suicide, but from the moment it happened, it just didn't add up. I mean, listen to what the hotel's night manager said. The whole scene was just bizarre. Olson had supposedly run across a pitch-black room, somehow avoided 2 beds, and launched himself straight through a closed window, a window that had the shade and the curtains drawn. Immediately, the CIA machine kicked into high gear to control the story. They told Olson's family he just had a nervous breakdown. They completely buried the fact that he'd been drugged with LSD. Gottlieb himself, along with the other agent who was in the room when Olson died, actually went to pay a condolence visit to the widow, most likely, as she later figured, to see if she was suspicious. And then, years later, when investigators started sniffing around, the director of the CIA ordered Gottlieb to destroy every single record of MKUltra.
Gottlieb may have burned the files, but you can't just make something like MKUltra disappear. Its ghosts would continue to haunt the country, and it fundamentally changed how Americans saw their own government.
What's really wild is how this secret program mirrored stuff we were seeing in fiction. Think about the movie The Manchurian Candidate, that terrifying idea of a brainwashed soldier turned into an assassin. Well, it turns out that wasn't just fiction. A major goal of MKUltra was to create that exact thing, an assassin who would kill on command and have no memory of it. It's one of those cases where reality was somehow even more frightening than the movies.
And when bits and pieces of projects like MKUltra finally started to leak out to the public in the 1970s, the damage was just immense. As historian Timothy Melly says here, discovering that your own government was using these secret, dark methods on its own citizens, it just shattered public trust. That fear of brainwashing, which used to be aimed at the Soviets, was now pointed right back at Washington.
But here's the ultimate, almost cosmic irony of Sidney Gottlieb's entire life's work. The drug he spent the most time on, the one he thought held the key to controlling the human mind, was LSD. His research and the fact that the CIA bought up basically the entire world's supply helped that drug escape from the lab. It got out into the world and ended up fueling the 1960s counterculture, the exact opposite of the conformity and control he was working so hard to create.
And that brings us right back to the man himself. After he left the CIA, Gottlieb threw himself into a life of service. Hospice work, speech therapy. He really seemed to be trying to become a new person. But the question is, can 25 years of good deeds really wash away a career spent orchestrating what Kinzer calls these heinous assaults on human life? Can a man like Sidney Gottlieb ever truly be forgiven or find atonement? That's a question that really doesn't have an easy answer.